Okay, so ready to dive in.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Today we're taking a look at, well, more like a deep dive into the reporter's redemption. This story about a journalist, he wins a Pulitzer, top of his game, right?
hmm
But also kind of miserable, relatable much.
It's like the author took all those things we grapple with, ambition, purpose, those big life choices, and put them under a microscope. And the seven deadly sins. Talk about a framework.
Yeah, and the story starts with this journalist, Carl, at this big journalism conference. He's getting a Lifetime Achievement Award, but he's totally unhappy.
Which I think is something a lot of people can relate to, that dissonance, right? Like you achieve what you thought you always wanted, and then what?
Right, it's like, is this it? So Carl bumps into this old flame, Isabel, and she's totally gone in a different direction with her life. She's all about ancient wisdom now.
Yeah, it's like she represents this other path Carl could take in, one less focused on external validation.
And she's the one who sends him to this bookstore, the Mystic Tome. And the way the author describes it, it's like stepping into another world. Old books that smell of parchment.
The perfect atmosphere for Carl to start this journey through the seven deadly sins.
Totally. Each sin is like a mirror reflecting a different aspect of his own struggles.
And the first one he confronts is pride.
And Carl, oh boy, does he have pride. There's this scene where he's interviewing this government official about a homeless crisis. But he's not really trying to solve anything. Just trying to make the guy look bad.
It's like that saying, pride comes before the fall.
And we see these flashbacks to a younger Carl, totally riding high after this big expose, not even realizing how he hurt a junior reporter he was supposed to be mentoring.
It shows how blinding pride can be, how it can poison relationships.
Totally. So how does he get over this pride thing? Asking for a friend.
Well, the story shows this interesting contrast. Carl has another vision, but this time he's confronting the official with humility. He's still firm, but he's respectful, and the outcome is totally different.
Interesting. Like you get more with honey than vinegar.
Exactly. Humility isn't about being a pushover. It's about approaching things with an open mind.
Which is hard, especially when you think you're the smartest person in the room.
Definitely. It's something you have to work at. And as Carl's dealing with pride, he gets hit with another temptation, greed.
Yeah, this media mogul, Richard Caldwell, he comes along offering Carl the world. Fame, fortune, you name it.
It's the kind of awful that could make or break you. And that's the dilemma for Carl, right? It's like, what do you compromise for success?
Yeah, do you sell it for the big bucks or stick to your guns? It's a tough one.
And the story really gets into that struggle. Carl, he sees the good he could do with those resources, but also that potential for, corruption.
Like losing sight of the truth, just chasing clicks and views.
Exactly. And while he's wrestling with all that, he runs headfirst into wrath.
Which, you won't believe this, surfaces during a panel on ethics in journalism. Ironic. Talk about a setup. And of course, it dissolves into this huge argument, everyone pointing fingers.
Oh, so like Twitter, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the danger with anger, right? It just shuts down any real conversation.
So Carl, he's had enough. And where does he go? Yep, straight back to the Mystic Tome. Looking for some peace and quiet, maybe a little wisdom from those old books.
We all need that escape sometimes. Whether it's a bookstore, a yoga class, whatever works.
Totally. But the point is finding a healthy way to deal with those feelings. Because Carl's visions, they show how destructive anger can be.
Yeah, good reminder to check yourself before you wreck yourself, right?
Exactly. And speaking of tough emotions, let's talk about envy.
Ah, the green-eyed monster. And in Carl's case, it's directed at this rising star journalist, Lily Chen. She's everything he feels like he's not anymore.
That's a relatable one, right? Seeing someone else achieve what you always wanted.
Like when your friend gets that amazing job or travels to some exotic place.
And the story shows how envy can eat away at you. Carl starts criticizing Lily's work, trying to find flaws.
Putting her down to make himself feel better.
Classic defense mechanism. But the story offers an interesting antidote. Kindness.
Kindness. Seriously.
It's about choosing to celebrate other people's successes instead of feeling threatened by them.
Okay, I get that. But it's easier said than done, right?
Definitely takes effort. But the rewards are huge. Carl eventually connects with Lily. They have a real conversation. It changes everything.
It's like a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah,
Supporting each other just makes everything better.
for sure. And speaking of supportive environments, let's get into lust.
Yes, the after parties. Always interesting, those.
Right, and Carl's in a vulnerable place, so he's drawn to this woman who offers, let's say, a distraction.
We've all been there, right? Looking for an escape, even if it's just temporary.
It's human nature. But the story isn't about judging Carl for that. It's about recognizing that we always have a choice.
And Carl, he chooses to walk away.
Which takes strength, right? To walk away from something that feels good in the moment.
Definitely. So Carl, conscience intact, he comes face to face with gluttony. But we're not just talking about overeating, right?
Bro, this is about the kind of gluttony that's all around us. The constant need for more information, stuff, experiences.
Like that fear of missing out. Always being plugged in, never switching off.
And how exhausting that is, right? Always consuming, never really satisfied.
Which brings us to the last sin. Sloth.
Yeah.
And it's not just about laziness, is it?
Right. It's deeper than that. It's that apathy, that lack of motivation to even try.
And Carl's definitely feeling that. He's just done.
Burnt out, ready to give up.
But then something interesting happens. He gets this Uber driver who gives him some unexpected wisdom.
It's like the universe works in mysterious ways, right? Sending help from the most unexpected places.
And what the driver reminds Carl is, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is just show up.
Even when you're tired, even when you're afraid, just keep going.
And that's exactly what Carl does. He shows up to receive his award and his speech. What's not what people are expecting.
He gets real, talks about his struggles, his own darkness.
He even mentions the Mystic Tome.
Right. In front of all these journalists. Could have been career suicide.
But instead, it's this incredibly authentic moment.
And people connect with that, you know? It's powerful.
It's like sometimes the most impactful stories are the ones that show our vulnerability.
Totally. And that brings us to the big question for our listeners. What's your Mystic Tome experience?
That thing that challenges you, pushes you to grow.
It might be uncomfortable, but it's worth it in the end.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that.
Until next time.
And it's tough, right, to resist those temptations, to face those deeper parts of yourself.
It's a process. But like you were saying, Carl, he makes the choice to walk away, which leads him to, well, you guessed it, gluttony.
But not just the food kind, right? Although those conference spreads can be dangerous.
It's more about that hunger for more, information overload, that constant need for stimulation.
Like we're all glued to our phones, always scrolling, always consuming. When does it end?
And the story shows how that constant consumption can actually leave you feeling emptier.
Exhausted even. Which brings us to sloth. And this one, it's sneaky, right?
It really is. It disguises itself as just needing a break, but it's more about that lack of motivation, that feeling of what's the point.
And Carl, he's there. He's hit that wall. Done with the conference, done with the whole charade.
Ready to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
But then he has this encounter almost like a divine intervention.
Right. This Uber driver gives him this totally profound pep talk.
Sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways.
And the message, just show up. Even when it's hard, even when you'd rather stay in bed.
And you know what Carl does? He goes to that awards ceremony and his speech, forget about it.
He spills it, all of it.
Yeah.
His struggles, his doubts, even mentions the Mystic Tome.
Talk about a mic drop moment.
Right. In front of all these big shot journalists, he gets real.
And it resonates. Because authenticity, it's powerful.
People can spot a fake a mile away, but when you're genuine, it shines through.
For sure. So to bring it home for our listeners today, we have a question for you.
What's your Mystic Tome? That experience that challenges you, pushes you outside your comfort zone.
It might be uncomfortable, even a little scary, but it's in those moments that we grow.
So until next time, keep asking the tough questions, keep exploring. And remember, the journey might be messy, but it's always worth it.
See you next time.